It was supposed to be a routine night shift. Officers Ryan Carter and Jake Holloway had been partners for years, patrolling the city's streets, keeping things in order. But nothing could have prepared them for what was about to unfold. As they cruised through a quiet stretch of downtown, their radio crackled with a call that seemed out of place. A black sedan had been reported driving erratically near the courthouse. Nothing major, but strange for this time of night. Ryan glanced at Jake. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" Jake nodded. "Yeah, let's check it out." They pulled up behind the vehicle, their squad car's lights flashing a dull red and blue glow against the pavement. The car in front of them didn't budge. No attempt to flee, no reaction at all. That was unusual. Most people, even if they weren't guilty of anything, at least showed some kind of response. Ryan approached the driver's side while Jake took the passenger's. As soon as Ryan knocked on the window, the driver slowly rolled it down, and that's when they saw him. Sitting behind the wheel, dressed sharply in a tailored suit, was none other than Ethan Marsh the head of Internal Affairs. The same guy responsible for investigating police misconduct. The man every cop in the department knew by name. And now, here he was, staring at them with an expression that was hard to read. For a moment, there was silence. Ryan and Jake exchanged a glance. This was no ordinary traffic stop. "Evening, sir," Ryan said carefully. "We received a report about erratic driving. Everything okay?" Ethan didn't answer right away. He exhaled slowly, his fingers tapping the steering wheel. "Officers, I appreciate your concern, but I suggest you let this one go." His voice was calm, measured, but there was something off about it. Jake shifted on his feet. "Have you been drinking, sir?" he asked, peering into the car. That's when he noticed it, the slight tremble in Ethan's hands, the way his pupils seemed just a little too dilated. Something was definitely wrong. Ethan sighed, almost as if he had expected this. Then he did something that made both officers tense up. He reached into his jacket. "Sir, keep your hands where I can see them," Ryan barked, his heart pounding. But Ethan didn't stop. His hand disappeared into the inside pocket of his coat. And in that moment, both officers had to decide, was this just a misunderstanding, or were they about to witness something they could never take back? Ryan's hand hovered near his holster, every muscle in his body tense. The air between them felt thick, charged with uncertainty. Jake shifted his stance, ready for anything. "Sir, I said keep your hands where we can see them." Ethan paused, his fingers brushing the edge of whatever was inside his jacket. For a second, it looked like he was reconsidering his next move. Then, slowly, he pulled his hand back into view. Clutched between his fingers was a sleek leather wallet, his badge. He flipped it open, revealing his identification. "I'm on your side," he said, his voice steady but laced with something else. Fatigue, maybe, or fear. Ryan exhaled, just enough to loosen his shoulders, but the unease remained. This wasn't right. If Ethan Marsh was out here in the middle of the night, alone, acting suspicious, there had to be more to the story. Internal Affairs didn't just slip up like this. They were calculated, precise. Jake took a step closer, studying the man's face. There was a thin sheen of sweat on his forehead, despite the cool night air. His breathing wasn't quite steady either. Something had rattled him. "You're not okay," Jake said. "What's going on?" Ethan hesitated, glancing past them toward the empty street as if checking to see if anyone was watching. Then, barely above a whisper, he said, "You shouldn't be here." Ryan exchanged a look with Jake. That wasn't an answer, it was a warning. "Who are you running from?" Ryan pressed, lowering his voice just enough to match the intensity of the moment. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Listen to me," he said. "There are things happening in this department that you don't want to be involved in. Just walk away." Jake scoffed, shaking his head. "That's not how this works. You know that better than anyone." Ethan sighed, rubbing a hand down his face. The exhaustion in his expression was undeniable, but there was something else too, a flicker of doubt. like he was caught between two impossible choices. Ryan's gut told him that whatever was going on, it was bigger than a simple traffic stop. "We can't help if you don't talk to us," he said. "But if you're in trouble, you need to tell us now." Ethan hesitated, his gaze shifting again to the darkened street behind them. Then, almost too quietly, he muttered, "They're watching." A chill ran down Ryan's spine. Jake must have felt it too because he instinctively straightened, his hand tightening around his flashlight. "Who?" Jake asked. Ethan swallowed hard. "People who don't want the truth getting out." And before either officer could press for more, Ethan suddenly stiffened, his eyes widening with something close to panic. Ryan followed his gaze, just in time to see the faintest glint of something moving in the shadows. Ryan's breath hitched as his eyes darted toward the shadows. For a second, he saw nothing, just the empty street, the distant glow of a street lamp flickering against the pavement. But then there it was again, a subtle movement, too smooth to be the wind. Someone was there, watching. Jake must have caught it too because his posture shifted, his stance turning defensive. "Ethan," he muttered under his breath, "who's out there?" Ethan didn't answer right away. His fingers tightened around the steering wheel, his knuckles turning pale. His breathing was shallow now, his chest rising and falling in quick, uneven patterns. He was scared, genuinely scared. And that set off every alarm in Ryan's mind. "Ethan," Ryan said, his voice lower now, controlled but firm, "we need to know what's happening. If there's a threat, we can't just stand here." Ethan's gaze flickered between them, hesitation clear in his eyes. He looked like a man standing at the edge of a cliff, deciding whether to jump. Then, finally, he spoke. "They're already here," he murmured. "They don't make mistakes. If they see you talking to me, you'll be in this just as deep as I am." Jake's jaw tightened. "Who are they?" Ethan hesitated again, glancing at the shadows where the movement had been. His lips pressed together, as if saying their names would somehow summon them. Then, a sound, small but distinct. The faintest click asterisk of something metallic. Ryan reacted on instinct, grabbing Jake's arm and pulling him back toward the squad car. "Cover," he snapped. Jake didn't need to be told twice. He ducked behind the car, his hand hovering near his holster, but not drawing his weapon just yet. The street was still, silent, but the tension in the air was suffocating. Ethan remained in his car, his grip on the steering wheel so tight his fingers trembled. "You should have just let me go," he muttered, his voice heavy with something that sounded dangerously close to regret. Ryan kept his eyes on the street. The movement had stopped, but that didn't mean they were alone. Someone was out there waiting, watching. Jake peeked over the edge of the squad car. "Ethan, if you don't start making sense, we're not going anywhere." Ethan exhaled sharply. "It's internal," he admitted. "Deep and dangerous. There are people in the department, high up, who have been running things their way for years. It's not just corruption, it's control. And I got too close." Ryan's stomach twisted. He'd heard whispers before, rumors of officers looking the other way, cases disappearing, decisions being made behind closed doors. But this was something else entirely. "So they're coming for you?" Jake asked. Ethan gave a slow, deliberate nod. "And if you're seen with me," his voice trailed off, letting the implication hang in the air. Ryan clenched his jaw. This wasn't just about a traffic stop anymore. It wasn't even about Ethan Marsh. This was bigger. And now, they were right in the middle of it. Then, out of nowhere, the street lamp above them flickered once, then went dark. A deep silence followed. And that's when Ryan knew, whoever was out there wasn't just watching anymore. They were making their move. The darkness felt heavier now, pressing in around them like a warning. Ryan's pulse pounded in his ears as he scanned the street, every instinct screaming that they were out of time. The air was thick with tension, the kind that only came before something bad, really bad. Jake moved first, his voice barely above a whisper. "We need to get off this street." His grip tightened around his flashlight, but he didn't turn it on. The last thing they needed was to make themselves an easier target. Ethan swallowed hard, still gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping him grounded. "They won't let me leave," he said, his voice hollow. "And now they won't let you either." Ryan's gut twisted. This wasn't paranoia. Ethan knew something. Felt something, but they couldn't see yet. And the worst part, he was probably right. A rustling noise echoed from the alleyway just ahead, subtle but deliberate. Not the wind, not an animal. Someone was there, moving closer. Ryan reached for his radio. "Dispatch, we need immediate backup at." Static. No response. Jake tried his own radio. "Dispatch, do you copy?" More static. Ethan shook his head. "They've cut you a line. Standard move." His voice was steady now, resigned. "You won't get through." Ryan's mind raced. If their comms were compromised, that meant this was bigger than some random tale in the shadows. This was planned, coordinated, and whoever they were, they had control over more than just Ethan. A single step echoed from behind them. Ryan and Jake spun around, their hands instinctively moving toward their weapons, but still holding back. They couldn't see anyone, just the darkness stretching between buildings, the faint outlines of cars parked in the distance. Then another step. Closer this time. Jake tensed. "We need to move. Now." Ethan hesitated, his fingers hovering over the ignition. "If I drive off, they'll stop me before I get 2 blocks." Ryan looked around, his mind working fast. Their options were running out. They couldn't call for help, couldn't drive away without being intercepted, and whoever was in the shadows was closing in. Then from the alley, a voice. Low, calm, too controlled to be anything but a warning. "Step away from the car." Ryan's breath caught. The voice wasn't yelling. It wasn't panicked. It was confident. Like whoever was speaking knew they were already in control. Jake's jaw tightened. "Who are you?" No answer. Ethan exhaled, his hands shaking now. "You don't understand," he whispered. "If we don't leave now, none of us will." Ryan's grip on his flashlight tightened. He could feel it now, that unbearable weight of something about to explode. And then, just as another step echoed from the darkness, a second voice spoke. This one, even calmer than the first. "Too late." The words hung in the air, cold and final. *2, late *. Ryan's fingers twitched near his holster, but he held back. He needed to see them first, to understand what they were up against. His breath was slow, measured, but his pulse was anything but. From the alley, 2 figures emerged. No uniforms, no badges, just dark clothing that blended into the night. They moved with a kind of precision that only came with experience. Not street thugs, not ordinary criminals. These were professionals. Jake shifted beside him, his stance tightening. "You need to identify yourselves," he called out, his voice controlled but firm. The first man stopped just short of the streetlight's edge, keeping his face in shadow. "That's not how this works, officer." Ryan felt the weight of those words. Whoever these guys were, they had no intention of playing by the rules. Ethan sucked in a shaky breath, gripping the steering wheel like he was holding onto his last chance at survival. "I told you," he whispered. "They don't leave loose ends." Ryan's stomach clenched. He had a sinking feeling that loose ends now included him and Jake. Then, without warning, the second man moved. A swift, deliberate step toward them. Jake reacted instantly, raising a hand. "That's close enough." But the man didn't stop. Ryan's instincts kicked in. He stepped forward, subtly positioning himself between Ethan and the approaching figures. "You need to back off," he warned. "Whatever this is, it doesn't have to go this way." The first man let out a slow, almost amused breath. "You still think this is a choice?" And then from behind, the screech of tires. Ryan spun just in time to see a black SUV rounding the corner at full speed, its headlights cutting through the darkness like a blade. Ethan's breath hitched. No, no, no. The SUV didn't slow down. Ryan's mind raced. This wasn't an escape vehicle. This was an extraction, and Ethan was the target. Move, Jake shouted, and he and Jake were standing in the way. Ryan's mind raced. Everything was happening too fast. The SUV, the armed figures, the creeping certainty that this wasn't just about Ethan anymore. This was about control. And right now, he and Jake had none. Jake's hand hovered near his weapon, his stance rigid. We're not walking away from this, are we? He muttered under his breath. Ryan's jaw tightened. Not unless we make them think we already lost. Ethan's hands were still gripping the steering wheel, his face pale under the dim glow of the street lamp. They won't let me go, he whispered. They won't let any asterisk of us go. The first man from the alley took another step forward, calm, controlled. This isn't your fight, officers. Step aside. Ryan's grip tightened around his flashlight. See, that's the problem. We don't take orders from ghosts in the dark. The second man exhaled sharply, like he was disappointed but not surprised. You should have listened. Then, the SUV's back door swung open, and a new figure stepped out. Ryan's breath caught in his chest. He knew this man. So did Jake. The streetlight finally revealed the man's face. Captain Donovan their commanding officer. The same man who had trained them, backed them up on calls, stood in front of reporters talking about integrity and justice. And now he was standing with them. Jake's expression darkened. No, no way. Captain Donovan sighed, his hands in his pockets like this was just another day at the office. Boys, I really wish you hadn't been the ones to answer that call. Ryan felt a slow, sinking weight in his chest. You're part of this. Donovan gave a small, regretful nod. It's not what you think. Jake let out a bitter laugh. It's exactly what we think. Donovan's face remained calm, but there was something behind his eyes. A warning. Walk away, he said. You're good cops. This doesn't have to be your problem. Ryan glanced at Ethan, who sat frozen in the driver's seat, watching, waiting. He was the reason they were here, the reason this whole thing had unraveled. But now Ryan understood. Ethan wasn't the problem. He was the evidence, and Donovan knew it. Ryan's heart pounded. If we let you take him, he disappears. That's the plan, isn't it? Donovan exhaled slowly. It's bigger than you realize. Jake scoffed. It always is. Then, in a move no one expected, Ethan made his choice. With a sudden burst of motion, he threw the car into drive and slammed his foot on the gas. The sedan lurched forward, tires screeching, aimed straight at the SUV's open door. Chaos erupted. Donovan shouted, the armed men scrambled. Jake and Ryan dove out of the way. Ethan wasn't running, he was forcing their hand. And in that split second, Ryan realized Ethan hadn't been looking for a way out. He'd been looking for a way to expose them. As the car rammed into the SUV, the impact sent bodies staggering. Ryan hit the ground hard, but kept his eyes on Ethan. He reached into his jacket, not for a gun, but for something smaller, something flashing under the streetlights. At recorder the realization hit Ryan like a freight train. Ethan had been recording everything. Every word, every threat, every reveal. And now he had just made sure the right people would hear it. Donovan's face twisted in fury. You idiot, he hissed, stepping forward. But sirens wailed in the distance.